This video will work through problem 5.4 from Gapenski's Healthcare Finance, 6th edition. Okay, in problem 5.4, we're presented with a general hospital that has a cost structure of fixed costs equal to 10 million, variable costs per day of 200, and charges per day equal to 1,000. And so we're asked to construct the hospital's base case projected P&L statement. Okay, so P&L starts with revenues, total revenues, and in this case, it's going to be, we're still on a fee-for-service basis, so it's $1,000 per day times our base case is going to be 15,000 days. So 1,000 times 15,000 is 15 million. Total variable cost is $200 per day times 15,000 days is going to give us $3 million. And so our total contribution margin is 15 million minus 3 million, or 12 million. Our fixed costs are given as 10 million. And so our projected profits are 12 minus 10, 2 million. Okay, so Part B asks us, what is the hospital's break even? So we're obviously 15,000 is more than break even. But like we did in problem 5.3, what we need to do is build the profit function. So the profit function is profit equals total revenue minus total cost. In our case, total revenue is going to be equal to 1,000 per day times the number of days. We'll call that D. And then total cost is equal to fixed cost of 10 million plus $200 per day. Okay, so then profit is total revenue of 1,000 per day minus total cost, which is 10 million plus 200 times D. So distributing the negative, I get 1,000 per day minus 10 million minus 200, and then I can consolidate terms and I get 800D minus 10 million. So that is our profit function, right? So I need a new piece of paper here. So our profit function, 800D minus 10 million. And remember, to calculate break even, we're going to set profit equal to 0, because when total revenue equals total cost, then profit is going to equal 0 because we're subtracting cost from revenues. And if they're the same, you know, if revenues are 1,000 and total cost is 1,000, if you subtract 1,000 from 1,000, you get 0. So we want to know how many days will it take for us to get to 0 profit. So to solve this, we just add 10 million to both sides, and we wind up with 800D equals 10 million. And then we divide both sides by 800, and that gives us 12,500 days. So if we were to plug 12,500 back into our profit margin, or excuse me, our profit function, we'd get 0. Okay, so then part C asks what volume is required to provide a profit of $1 million or a profit of 500,000. Okay, so again, like we did in 5.3, this is not, there's no real trick to this. You decide what profit level you want to establish, whether that's 0, if you want break even, or some arbitrary level of profit like 1 million. So all you do is you set profit equal to whatever level of profit you want, and then you use the same profit function to get there. So add 10 million to both sides. Now we have 800D equals 11 million, right? Because I added 10 million to 1 million, that gives us 11. And so then D is equal to 13,750, or excuse me, 13,750 days. And then if we only want 500,000 instead of a million, same thing. 10 million. Sorry, all right, we'll just cross that out. 10 million. Right? Again, add 10 million to both sides, and you wind up with 800D equals 10,500,000. And then D, divide both sides by 800, and you wind up with 13,125 days, which is less than the 13,750 because we're trying to get to a lower level of profit than we did under the million. And then finally, part D, now assume a 20% of hospitals' inpatient days come from a managed care plan that wants a 25% discount from the charges, should the hospital agree to the discount proposal. Okay, now we're going to get a little trickier than what we did in 5.3, because we're not assuming that the entire entirety of all of the inpatient days goes to a discount of 25%. We're assuming only 20% do. So we've got to get a little more, we've got to do a little more than we did before. All right. So let's go back to our first question where we were looking at the original P&L. Under the original arrangements where we had 15,000 visits at $1,000 a day, profits were 2 million. Now, the change to the problem is 20% of the inpatient visits are going to come from a managed care plan that wants to get a 25% discount. So that 25% discount is going to apply to charges. And so some of the patients are going to pay $750 a day rather than $1,000 a day. In fact, it's going to be 20% of the patients. So 20% of 15,000 is 3,000. And then what's left is 12,000. So we're going to have 12,000 patients paying $1,000 a day and 3,000 patients paying $750 a day. No change to variable cost, no change to fixed costs. So basically, revenue is going to go down. So we're going to have two lines for our revenue now. We'll have revenue, let's say, undiscounted is going to equal 1,000 times 12,000, or 12 million. And then we're going to have the discounted revenue. And that's going to be 3,000 times 750, which is 2,250,000. We're still going to have variable costs, total variable costs of the same amount, right? So just because we're changing our revenues doesn't mean that our variable costs change. So we're still going to have 200 times 15,000, or 3 million in variable costs. So our total contribution margin is 14,250,000 minus 3 million gives us 11,250,000. Our fixed costs don't change, right? So we still have our original 10 million in fixed costs. And so profit now goes down to 1.25 million. So your text says from a purely financial standpoint, the hospital should accept the discount. So each patient is still paying more than it costs to have them in. We are still making a profit, so we are still exceeding our break even. So from a very basic, kind of break even perspective, we are making profit. One question you'd have to ask is it enough profit to justify staying in existence? So as to whether we should accept that discount or not. That's a little more complicated. So the basic simple answer is we're making a profit, so therefore we should be willing to accept the discount rather than losing the patients. Because if we lost the patients, we would have, so let's think through that. This is not in the problem per se, but if we lost the patients, we would lose the discounted revenue, but we would also have a reduction in total variable costs. So if the HMO, we said no to the HMO, we would go from 15,000 patient days to 12,000 patient days. We would have revenue of 12 million because we'd be charging the remaining patients that $1,000 a day. Our total variable cost would be 12,000 times the 200 that we had before. So that's times 200, that's 2.4 million. So our total contribution margin now is 9.6 million, right? Our fixed costs are 10 million. And so our profit would be a loss of 400,000. So we can't afford to lose the 3,000 patient days that are represented by the managed care's patients. So we would have to take it, assuming that the alternative, we would have to accept the discount, assuming that the alternative is that the managed care plan would pull its patients and send them to a different hospital, because we can't sustain a fixed cost of 10 million on 12,000 patient days, even at the full $1,000 per day in reimbursement.